Hi there. In the brokers department here at HomeSmart, we often get questions about the AAR residential lease agreement, so I'm going to take a minute to walk you through and give you enough information that you can draft a lease on your own. Please remember that you must take a class on leasing properties if you're going to be involved in this process. This tutorial will not take the place of any class. However, we're hoping to get you enough information that you can draft a lease for your tenant. Line 1, complete the landlord name. If you do not know the landlord's name, check the box on line 1 and allow the listing agent to complete the landlord name on line 330. List all the tenants that will be responsible for the payment of the rent on line 2. Line 6 and 7, complete the entire property address. Line 9, check a box next to personal property that the tenant is expecting to be left for the tenant's use at the property. Line 12, list the names of all people that will be living at the property. Lines 18 and 19, list any addendums that will be incorporated into the lease agreement. Line 20, indicate the day and the time the lease will begin and end. Line 30 to 32, list the amount of earnest money that the tenant is writing a check for. Line 33, indicate the form of the earnest money, and then lines 35 to 37 indicate where the earnest money check will be held. Line 45, enter the amount of money that the tenant will pay on a monthly basis. Lines 46 to 47 indicate if there will be sales tax added to the monthly rent, where the rent needs to be sent, and who the rent check needs to be made out to. If you don't know if there will be sales tax, check with the listing agent. Lines 57 to 58 enter the prorated rent amounts and the dates that the prorated rent is for if the tenant is moving in mid-month. Line 66, enter the monthly lease amount unless there are prorated lease amounts. Then the prorated amount will most likely be inserted on line 66. Line 69, enter the amount of the security deposit that the tenant will pay. The MLS will indicate what the landlord is expecting to receive. This amount cannot exceed 1.5 times the monthly lease amount per the Arizona Residential Landlord-Tenant Act. Lines 70 to 71, list refundable pet and cleaning deposits. Again, check the MLS for the amounts the landlord is hoping to receive. Lines 73 to 78, list non-refundable deposits that the tenant will pay. Line 80 is where you will list the monthly sales tax rate, if there is any. Line 81, enter the total of lines 66 through lines 78. Line 82 lists the earnest money amount the tenant will deposit upon acceptance of this lease agreement. Line 83, enter the total of lines 81 minus line 82 and the amount of money that the tenant will submit at the time they move into the property. The date the final move-in money will be deposited is also listed here. Line 84, list where the refundable deposits will be held. And remember, HomeSmart does not have a trust account and no monies should be made payable or held by HomeSmart. Lines 101 to 106 indicate if the tenant will have pets with them at the property. Also indicate if the tenant will provide a liability insurance policy and the amount of the policy. Lines 107 to 108. This is where you're going to indicate how many keys, garage door openers, etc. that the landlord will supply the tenant with at the time they move in. Lines 115 to 116. List any utilities that the landlord will be paying for during the lease term. If nothing is inserted here, then the tenant will be required to cover all utilities. Lines 117 to 118 indicate if the property is located within a community association. Lines 120 to 128 indicate who's going to pay for certain maintenance items for the property. On line 159, the tenant will initial acknowledging that they will comply with the rules of the law and that they agree to supervise any occupants. Line 172 is where the tenant will initial, acknowledging that the state of Arizona has pool barrier requirements. And if there's a pool on the property, their initials will also acknowledge that they have received the form titled Important Notice About Pool Safety. Line 178, check a box if the property was constructed prior to 1978. If it was constructed after 1978, check the box on line 183. Lines 181 and 184, the tenant's initials are going to indicate when the property was built. Check a box if the property does or does not contain smoke detectors. Same thing for line 188, except for carbon dioxide detectors. Even though there are no boxes to be checked or initialed, lines 191 to lines 255 contain very important information that you must go over with your tenant. Lines 257 to 272, this is where you're going to list any additional terms or conditions that the tenant would like included in their lease agreement. Line 276, add additional days for the tenant to deliver the move-in, move-out form back to the landlord if they are needed. Lines 285 and 286, tenant and landlord will initial that they are agreeing to indemnify and hold the brokers harmless from any loss or claims regarding the lease or the premises. Line 289, insert a date and time that you would like the landlord to respond to your lease agreement. If the landlord does not respond back within that time period, then the lease will be deemed withdrawn by the tenant. Lines 295 to 297, this is where you'll list your name, your MLS agent code, firm name, etc. Line 299, check the box if HomeSmart is representing the tenant exclusively, or the second box if HomeSmart also is the listing brokerage. Line 302, this is where the tenants will sign the lease agreement. And lines 305 to 337 will be completed by the listing agent and the landlord. And that's how to properly fill out the AAR residential lease agreement. I hope this was helpful, and remember to always give your tenant copies of any and all documents they've signed, and to call a consulting broker here at HomeSmart with any additional questions that you might have.